reasons why I think Op took this debate over Gov. The first reason was because I think towards the end, opposition's type of response and the way you were dealing with opposition's case became very defensive. To the extent that I think the principle that came out strong with the first speaker was completely lost with the method of response he chose to take. I'm gonna explain how later on. And secondly, I think that you were a bit too one-dimensional with the way you were attacking the debate. It almost became a government versus government war sort of thing, forgetting that actually it was your first speaker who wanted to talk about that there are effects and there are other situations that are going to be important between a government and its own people. Failing to expand and attack those dimensions as well also limited you eventually towards the end. So like 2 issues in the debate. Firstly, will there be responsible use of quote-unquote superheroes between a government and its people? Secondly, will there be responsible use of superheroes between a government and a government? Let's look at the government versus government thing first. This is largely a benefits versus harms issue for me. And in the beginning it was sort of a deadlock because the benefits I got from your side of the house were clear. Deterrence, self-defense, i.e. should China attack the Philippines or should the Philippines stand up to China if you had a chance? The harms you got from you were war becomes more likely and secondly, the disproportionality of war. When I was looking at them and weighing them in a vacuum, you both argued your points very well. So for me to break the deadlock wasn't so much like looking at the quality of your arguments, but more of how the responses came out. This is where I mean that you became defensive. To a large extent, the response to the depth speech and the whip speech, you never really argued why your benefits were better anymore. 80-90% of your responses were all, oh, but we have nuclear weapons anyway, or like China already has an advantage anyway, or like the US already has a massive power imbalance anyway. So in a sense, you became defensive in the sense that you're not telling us anymore what's so beneficial about it. You're just saying, oh yeah, it's kind of bad, but like there are already bad things happening in status quo anyway. It destroys the credibility and the ethos of the entire case. I think you should have gone back and always reviewed that, no, there's a very big distinction between people and the current weapons that we have. Which is why I think it became crucial later on. Which is why I think it became like much clearer for me with the whip speech coming from Op, when there was this idea about autonomy. Personally, I think it came out a bit late, but fair enough, I could credit it still. Because I think that she was able to take advantage of the entire Gov case with regards to, so what's the difference really between machines and humans? See, your stance is to say, oh, we can power up humans because powerful machines and weaponry exists. I think it was more strategic for them to say, but there's a difference. And the difference is free will. People can turn rogue. I think like what you could have done, though like I didn't step in or anything, was to say a better response would have been, why are humans powered up better than the weapons that we have, rather than say they're not as bad as each other. At least that way the principle is still going to stand. A little sub-layer in this issue would be along the lines of can smaller nations benefit. In the beginning I kind of bought it, but when I noticed that the POI rates coming from Op went along the lines of, do you agree that all countries can develop technology at the same rate? And the answer was no. The idea of leveling the playing field assumes that all of the countries can generally have a good chance of developing them. Like, easier said than done that the Philippines can develop technology at the same rate that China can, and ultimately it's like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's hard to believe. So I think that there was a burden for you to prove that it would be possible for smaller countries to to develop the same technology anyway. So that's for the first issue. Second issue, and very briefly, will there be responsible use between a government and its citizens? I think like this is where the width or the one-dimensional criticism works out. You were good at arguing the state versus state effects. State versus citizens largely came out of the deputy speech. First of all, the mistrust idea. Second of all, they're going to use it to hide accountability, hide things. I felt that it came out particularly late, but not late enough in the case for it to not be credited. I think that the whip speech had to evolve. I think that the reply had to address that. So like, but it was certainly the smaller and more marginal issue in the debate, but it deserved some credit nonetheless. I think there could have been a greater attempt to look at how, for instance, going back to the first speaker, fighting crime within your own country, why is that important? If it's not an international issue, what are the national benefits? These small things could have, I think, neutralized it towards the end, but it wasn't resurrected. So like two pieces of advice for Gov here would be, first of all, to be less defensive with response next time, and second of all, to be more multi-dimensional in your facets of attack, just to make sure that you have lots of ways to beat your opponent. So like, good job for Woodrose, and good luck in the next round. I think 5 is a sure break, 2 or 3 fourths you're gonna break.
Thank you.
At least that's what my